Here's a question, Ben. How do you beat Hogan, and why are you better positioned to beat him than the other candidates? And I would add to that, than other candidates who claim to be progressive, some of whom have very progressive records in this state.
Sure. No, look, absolutely. Kind of a few pieces to that. First of all, we got to remember how Hogan won. Hogan won by 63,000 votes in a year that was a flood tide for Republicans and an ebb tide for Democrats. That year, he got about 60,000 of those 63,000 votes primarily from rural or Republican counties, where voting had surged 15 to 30% above historic levels. For that reason, we don't believe he can get many more votes. But second, 125,000 Democrats who had turned out in 2010 did not show up in 2014. And we should not just assume that the sort of energy we saw, say, at the Women's March or the activism in the few months after Trump came into office will sustain for 2 years. The reality is that when you look at why folks didn't turn out, critical margins of folks didn't turn out in 2014 or even 2016, it really comes down, polls suggest that they felt betrayed on the economy. There was not a compelling reason for them to turn out. Their problems weren't being addressed. I'm the only candidate in this race, for instance, who stood up for single payer. Clearly, now look, other folks say the public option, but anybody who knows the issue with any sort of subtlety knows that the public option will all but foreclose us going to single payer. And so it'll be that sort of courage, clarity, and frankly, pushing solutions at the actual scale of the problem, not half measures, that will inspire constituencies to turn out. But we will also go further. In 2012, when I was president of the NAACP, Van Jones referred to the NAACP under my leadership as the unsung hero of the 2012 election, because we put 1.3 million unlikely voters into motion, got them to the ballot box, got them voting. In fact, there was a point in Chicago where the Obama campaign was quoting our voter registration numbers to their own staff because the NAACP effort was going much stronger than theirs in 2012. We ran the #1 door-to-door voter registration operation in the country. So we will build a movement. We will build a movement by inspiring people with bold ideas that add up to real change for them and their families. But we'll also build a movement as experienced organizers who are skilled not just in the art of inspiration, but the science of voter mobilization. We will deploy that better and more thoroughly than anybody else. My campaign manager is a guy named Travis Tazalar. He was on the Bernie Central Committee with me. In 2010, he ran the coordinated campaign for the state. He's a 39-year-old former U.S. Marine, never ex. And he, that year in 2010, they put 120 paid organizers on the ground to turn out the vote. In 2014, it was 15. So we are full-throated, full-range Democrats, unafraid to talk about ending poverty and expanding opportunity, as well as unafraid to talk about defending civil rights and human rights. It's that full range that will help us inspire people, but it's the science and our years of knowing how to turn folks out that will make us the best bet to beat Hogan.